Hello and welcome to Cheshire Audio. Now something a bit different again today. A few years ago we thought these were dead. Sales had completely stopped. I think we went 12 months without selling any. But slowly, bit by bit, sales are increasing, and actually not that unusual to sell them now. CD players seem to be having a bit of a resurgence again. A lot of manufacturers have stopped making them. There's very little choice of decent players out there, really. So certainly the bottom end of the market seems to have completely disappeared. But there's still some quite interesting models, and that's what we're going to have a look today. One of my favourite players, the Roksan Blak, which not one you would have thought of straight away, but it's a very well put together machine actually. This, so we'll have a look and go through some features. Right, so Roksan Blak. It is quite tall. The front panel is quite a lot taller than a lot of other players. The Roksan K3 is about that sort of height. So it's probably a good inch or so, inch and a quarter taller than the K3. And things like Arcams and whatever, they're all sort of tend to be that sort of height. It's a good looking player though. I mean, the actual overall effect of it is it's quite an attractive player. And if you put the matching amplifier on up here, it's exactly the same front panel. The Blak amplifiers, stack the two together, it looks really good. Finish wise, they do the silver and they do graphite, which is almost, it's not black, but it's quite like a dark grey with a bit of a texture in it. And then a bit of a mystery finish called osmium that I've never actually seen in the flesh, but it's sort of like the graphite but seems to have a bit of a purple sheen, but it's difficult to say because I've only seen it in the brochure. But yeah, almost like a purple sheen within the texture. It's a very simple player operation wise, not an awful lot in the way of buttons on it. So we've got play, stop, eject, forward, backward, and then somewhere over here where what you would have thought was a power switch, this is actually time elapsed, time remaining button, so you can sort of cycle between that and the display. Yeah, no actual on-off switch at all, it would seem, but it is actually hidden underneath, and I can barely get my hand under. I think probably the idea is that you'll leave it switched on, because they do have quite a warm-up time. These they do seem to need to be left on for a while before they do their thing, really. It's not a massive difference, but they do sort of sweeten up when they've been on for a while. So let's put a CD in. So drawer open, put a CD up. Obviously can't play this because YouTube would object. Obviously going to, as I always do, show you what I'm putting in there, which is completely irrelevant, but I'll show you anyway. SF Sorrow by the Pretty Things, which is the first ever concept album as far as I'm aware. I think it predated Tommy. So yeah, if you like sort of 60s psychedelia, stroke folk, stroke rock, stroke storytelling, it's amazing. It's a really good album. One of my favourite albums. Managed to pick the vinyl up a long time ago, quite by accident, liked the cover and bought it, and then was just completely taken with it. So it's a fantastic little album, that is. But anyway, like I say, going off on a irrelevant tangent, which has nothing to do with what we're doing here. Okay, we're loading the CD into the drawer. Press and close. So it should bring up, just read discs, yeah, tracks, 17 tracks, and then time. So play, track 1. There we go. Nice big display. I mean, for us oldies, it's good because you can see it right across the room. There's no mistaking what tracks you're on. So if I can flick through quite well. So there's a remote as well. This is the same as the one using the Candy. It's quite a weighty remote. It's a nice sort of feel to it. Not actually any extra controls on here particularly. There's no programming or anything like that on here. It's a system remote that will actually work the amplifier as well. There's volume on it and that sort of thing for the amp. There's input select. So but we've got track select. We've got stop. Helps if you press the button properly. And play. So yeah, it's got the usual sort of stuff. Oh, it has got a shuffle button actually at the bottom, which I never understood shuffle. In the early days of CD, there's I remember people being absolutely overwhelmed by the fact they could shuffle the tracks around. I think with early CD, I think it tended to be so bland that people got a little bit bored of the sound of things and wanted to have features to play with. So I think that's a little bit why that sort of hangs on. But sound-wise, I think CD kind of came of age a few years ago, just at the point where people were stopping buying them. There were players coming out that were almost at the level of record. It was sort of very, very enjoyable to listen to, very musical and sort of interesting to listen to. And it took so many years. It took nearly 30 years to get to that point. And just as they did, they decided there was something better coming along. And streaming, really, in some ways, I feel, is starting right back at the start again. It's got a long way to go before it starts to do its thing properly. They need to really sort of start to understand it before it gets up to this sort of level. But the Roksan players, I mean, they're very, very musically open and correct, and you get a really nice natural presentation of them. There's very few players out there. There's some quite specialist brands out there doing stuff that's quite interesting, but Roksan seem to have sussed it. Riga have been really good. All their players have been really good over the years. Exposure have had some good players. Sugden had a great player but finished it. It's a real shame they finished it because that was lovely. Name Audio, their top players were really good, but they've obviously finished them all now. There's never that interval in players. My mind's gone blank now. There's a couple of really specialist brands that were good as well, which I can't remember the name of now, but there's been a few. But it does seem as though a lot of the mainstream players were always quite bland, always very digital sounding, which you'd expect, I suppose. But yeah, some companies seem to, and I've noticed that Roksan don't tell you what they use, what chipsets they use, and things like that. And I sort of agree with that. I think that's quite. I can understand why they do that, because people do get hung up on chipsets. It's got to be a Burr Brown this or whatever type of chipset, otherwise it can't be any good. And I think it's more to do. There's a lot more going on. I think it's a lot to do with the application, power supplies, and keeping noise out of the system and things like that. But yeah, it's great sounding player. One of my favourite players, actually, the Blak. I think it took me by surprise really, because I didn't expect. Because Roksan is a record player manufacturer, and you don't often. I mean, obviously Riga seemed to go down that line, but you don't often expect manufacturers like that to be able to come up with something as good as this when they're not just a specialist, but sort of specialising in it. It's quite a big jump over the K3. The K3 can sound a little bit sterile at times, but this is wonderful. Big sort of stereo sort of soundstage off it. Very dynamic, very, very natural, and really nice to use as well. So yeah, thoroughly recommended. I'll turn it around and we'll have a look at the back panel. Yeah, okay, on the back we've got various things. Actually, there's a lot of space on here because it's such a tall player. Didn't point out the nice Roksan badge on the top there. Makes it look a bit classy, or not, depends on your point of view. I quite like it actually. We've got two RCA outputs, left, right. It's also got XLRs as well, which I never quite decided about XLR. I think it's something they tend to put on for the American market. We don't tend to be that into it in this country. I've never really. I've experimented sort of between the two on things, and generally I feel as though phono cables sound better. It might just be me. Always sound a little bit more natural, whereas XLR quite often sounds a little bit mechanical somehow. Got some digital outputs so you can access the transport. It's got straight coaxial, which tends to be the best option normally on these things. XLR as well. I've never tried the XLR because I don't think I've ever had an actual DAC with an XLR input on it, or not at the same time as I've had one of these. And it's got optical as well, which I don't know. I've never found optical to be that greater option really. That sort of tends to sound very sterile. But again, might be me. I think people have their own opinions on these things, and it's always worth experimenting. I mean, I've got customers who actually swear by XLR, so and balanced outputs. But yeah, for me, it's never been as good an option. I think in some certain circumstances they can sound as good as or possibly better, but generally it's the RCAs. Yeah, standard IEC on that side. And that's it really. It's yeah, great player. I just thought I'd do a quick review on this one because I've not done a CD player apart from an unboxing. Just to show that we are still backing CD and still doing it, because we don't sell streamers. Partly because we really do think the CD players sound better. Okay, you don't get all the features, but yeah, I think generally if you've got a big CD collection, just make the most of it. Certainly don't ditch it. So yeah, there you go. That's the Roksan Blak. Okay, so that was the Roksan Blak. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed that. If you want to keep seeing more of this sort of thing, I don't know why. I don't know why you might, but if you want to see some more, just don't forget to subscribe and give us a like. If you've got any ideas of other things to review, then stick it in the comments if you want. If you've got any sort of general questions or anything, just always give us a ring. Don't worry about giving us a ring. I'll put the number at the end, or email. The email's there, will be there as well. Yeah, I've been asked quite a few people asked me to do a review of the Rega Illicit amplifier. It's a bit of a quandary with that one, which is difficult for me to explain, but there is a bit of a quandary with that one. But I might just do it anyway. Might just do it anyway. So yeah, like I say, I hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you in a future video. Thank you very much.